The land of Hyrule is home to many fascinating creatures and structures containing a fascinating amount of similarities with various real-world cultures from around the globe. Perhaps one of the most popular and mysterious entities in the entire franchise is Deathsword, a malevolent spirit wielding a brutal black blade who was sealed within the Arbiter's grounds until being released by Link. My fellow theorists have already thrown out several theories regarding this mini-boss, but today, instead of coming up with another traditional theory, we will look into the real-world cultural influences for Deathsword's character design and use that to draw some conclusions about its nature. I'm your host Andy, and welcome to Zeldom. In Twilight Princess's desolate Gerudo Desert lies the Runic Arbiter's Grounds, the top serving as a council space for the sages and home of the Mirror of Twilight, while the lower levels are decrepit and infested with monsters of the dead such as Pose, Stalfos, Dibdos, and most notably Deathsword, who was our subject of discussion. Deathsword is some sort of ghastly spirit who for some unknown reason was sealed into this brutish black blade. Instead of jumping straight into the in-game content and Zelda lore, I'm going to do a deep dive on the real-world cultural elements that potentially influence Deathsword's character design and use it to develop a theory. The design of Deathsword's appearance seems to have been a direct reinterpretation of the Grim Reaper from Western culture. It has a frightening skeletal body, the ghastly attributes of a wraith, and a large intimidating black blade which serves as a substitute for the Grim Reaper's traditional scythe. If this isn't convincing enough, Deathsword's name in French, Faucheur, is a direct reference to the French term for the Grim Reaper, Le Faucheuse. Despite Deathsword's appearance being inspired by Western culture, it actually has more connections to the Japanese Shinto religion. When Link first enters the circular room in which Deathsword is sealed, the room is dark and silent. In the center of the room, the large black sword is bound down by several ropes decorated by Ofuda, a type of talisman from the Shinto religion, which are said to be imbued with the power of certain kami. There isn't a clear-cut English definition for kami, but we can oversimplify and say that kami are spirits or forces of nature in the Shinto religion, but are not perfect or omnipotent like gods in Western culture. Traditionally, Ofuda are used to prevent misfortune and catastrophe by inviting good kami or repelling bad kami. However, in the case of Deathsword, the Ofuda are clearly sealing it, not repelling it, so there isn't a good correlation, right? Well, actually, the Ofuda in the game still serve the same traditional Shinto purpose. They're distributed all around the sword containing the spirit within the center, but when Link cuts one rope, he creates a weak spot allowing Deathsword to break free and burn the remaining talisman. So if Ofuda are normally meant to repel bad kami, hypothetically, this configuration would instead confine a bad kami, right? Kami are not perfect beings and therefore are capable of causing harm, but in the Shinto religion and folklore, there is only one kami who is innately evil from the human perspective, Amatsu Mikaboshi. It exists as an antithesis to all the positive forces of life and isn't a physical being, rather a powerful dark force working to control the universe. In later centuries folklore, Amatsu Mikaboshi was told to make other dark or demonic creatures slaves to its power, and interestingly enough, souls that died with deep emotions would be brought back as spirits to hurt the living by Mikaboshi's power. Such spirits are called Onryo, which literally means vengeful spirit. Although Onryo are wrathful ghosts and have no physical bodies, they have the power to harm or kill their enemies. The parallels between these parts of the Shinto religion and Deathsword should not be dismissed as mere coincidence. It's safe to say that Deathsword is a vengeful spirit fueled by its hatred similar to the Onryo. Likewise, the need to use many Ofuda to form its seal is an indication that this is a very powerful spirit, possibly working towards Hyrule's equivalent of Amatsu Mikaboshi's goal of complete chaos. Right here, it would be easy to assume that Amatsu Mikaboshi's equivalent in the Zelda franchise is Demise or Ganondorf. But remember, Mikaboshi is more of a force of nature than an individual entity, so we should be more focused on its purpose than a character. Therefore, I will claim that Hyrule's equivalent for Amatsu Mikaboshi is simply the desire to wield the Triforce merely for its power, instead of using it for noble causes and bestowing hope to the world. So if my interpretation here is valid, Deathsword would be the enraged spirit of a powerful being who sought after the power of the Triforce. Deathsword could be the spirit of one of the Dark Interlopers mentioned by the light spirit Lanayru. The Interlopers were a group of people in ancient Hyrule between the events of Skyward Sword and Ocarina of Time who learned to use sorcery to gain power and attempted to establish dominion over the Sacred Realm and claim the Triforce, causing Hyrule to plunge into chaos until the Light Spirits intervened by banishing them to the Twilight Realm. Other than their obvious connection to our previous conclusion, the first piece of evidence I have to suggest a connection between the Interlopers and Death Sword is the blade itself. The size and shape of the sword doesn't have a real-world title. However, the pure black color of the blade is a reference to the Muramasa swords, named after the 16th century Japanese blacksmith. Such blades were said to contain otherworldly evil powers, imposing a thirst for blood upon its wielder. This seems to align with what we know of the Interlopers, since the black design matches essentially everything made by the Interlopers or Twilight, and their lust for the Triforce's power led to much bloodshed and conflict across Hyrule. After Death Sword's seal is broken, red runic engravings begin to glow on the blade, which are completely unlike any language seen throughout Hyrule, further strengthening the reference to the Muramasa swords. This red glow is also similar to the red glow that appears on the scimitar of Twilight as Zant thrusts it into the skull of the fossilized Star-Lord, causing more red runes to run across its skull, then reanimate in an attempt to kill Link. Finally, if Death Sword truly is the spirit of an Interloper, isn't it interesting how its spirit ended up confined in the Arbiter's grounds where the Mirror of Twilight was kept, which is the only gateway to the world in which the Interlopers were banished?
Coincidence? I think not!
What I think could have happened was when the Light Spirit sealed away the Fused Shadow, taking away the Interlopers' primary source of power, they may have been sent to the Arbiter's grounds to be executed, similar to how Ganondorf was in Twilight Princess. However, after executing one of these Interlopers, perhaps the leader, the dark sorcery allowed their spirit to return seeking vengeance, becoming the ghastly wraith we know as Death Sword. The blade itself, originally used for the execution, then became possessed by the wraith. The ancient sages and/or light spirits were then forced to seal Death Sword away and banish the remaining Interlopers into the Twilight Realm to ensure they cannot pose a threat to Hyrule. What are your thoughts on this theory and Death Sword? Feel free to continue the discussion in the comments below. I know we made quite a few assumptions in the groundwork of this theory entirely based on the Shinto culture, and building a conclusion upon assumptions leads to a faulty argument, but the goal was to come up with a unique idea since there are already so many theories out there, so I hope you found these ideas as interesting as I did. Thank you all for watching, Zeldam out.